All right, everyone, welcome again. If this is a slight schedule change, so I actually did put all this together like kind of last minute, and so hopefully you'll go on this journey with me. So there might be some bumps, might be some things, and so a little bit about who I am. My name is Hernandez. I am an Argo CD maintainer, an Open GitOps maintainer, and I am head of community at Acuity. Acuity is a company that was founded by the creators of the Argo project. And so, originally they were at Intuit, and then they broke off and started a startup. So if the name is new to you, that's why. So I'm also a guitar player. So if anyone wants to nerd out about music, you can catch me after my website where you can catch all of my talks, presentations, demos, or you can just follow me on the socials here as well. So what I'm here to talk about. So a little bit of warning. This is an advanced GitOps talk. So what I mean by that is actually let me kind of like gauge the room. Who is using Flux or Argo CD currently? Just kind of quick show of hands, right? Okay, so yeah, so cool, right? And the rest of you, feel free to ask any questions you like. I might lose some of you because this talk has a lot of assumptions that you are familiar, at least familiar with Argo CD or Flux and GitOps practices in general. So just a warning, and again, my apologies. I threw this together last minute, right? So, but what I'm here to talk about is pipelines, right? Pipelines, CI/CD, all that good stuff. And when we talk about CI/CD and when we talk about deploying applications at scale, this is the kind of picture we have in our head. So we have, something, there's a PR, right, or something gets merged and something needs to get built, right? Typically, an application, when we say, build, it could be a compile of an application. Us in the Kubernetes land, right, especially in my life, that means build a container. So something gets built and it gets deployed to dev, right? It gets deployed to some environment out there somewhere. And you run some tests, right? It can be some code tests, some user regression tests. It can be user acceptance tests, whatever, right? You run testing against that. And whether or not that happens, whether or not it passes or whether or not you need to make changes, whatever, let's just assume everything's a golden path. You then deploying to some sort of staging environment. Maybe it goes through a few more environments, but then you go to the next environment, and that environment, it's kind of like an area where you're like, okay, let's see how this is going to look like in my environment, and after it passed all the tests, but how does it really going to look like? And then it gets deployed to prod. And everything, this is the kind of the picture and kind of process we see in our heads a lot of the times. That's the expectations, but the reality is much more complex than that. And so, there is, someone makes a config change, someone makes an application change, it runs some tests, it gets into staging, you run a canary, one gets approved, one gets, rejected, or they both get rejected for some reason. You throw it into like the canary release in prod, do some manual analysis, and all these steps have other steps, right? So pipelines can trigger other pipelines, which trigger then other subsequent pipelines, and so on and so forth, which is kind of the idea of behind the talk, right? Everything, everywhere, all at once. Like, a lot of stuff is happening, and a lot of stuff needs to be orchestrated, right? And so really, that's the reality of CI/CD, right? We kind of think of it as a linear process. We kind of think of it as, go from here to here, but in fact, it's kind of, it branches out almost infinitely, right? And so, and a lot of things can happen, and so on and so forth, right? And so, in the context of GitOps, CI is being overused. And CI and CD aren't the same thing. CI pipelines and CD pipelines are not the same thing. And so this is especially true, and I put it like in small kind of caveat letters, like in the context of GitOps, right? If you're using something like Argo CD, if you're using something like Flux, and if you're using something like a GitOps process where you're using, something like Git as a source of truth, right? Like even if you're using infrastructure as code, right? That kind of the same idea applies, right? Not just necessarily to GitOps, right? But CI and CD have different end goals, and so we kind of lump them together. And for the time being, right? Like Jenkins was like the big thing because it was lumped together. You did everything with one platform. But a CI pipeline, its goal is given code, build me an artifact, right? The idea is that they're short-lived. It's predefined beginning and end, done once a job is successful, whatever that job is. It's smaller in scope. It's rigid, top-down definition. It's suitable for short, like I'm compiling something, right? Or I'm building containers, like boom, boom, boom. A CD pipeline is given an artifact, can you roll it out safely for me? And the timeline it can be indefinite. We don't know. It could be very, very short. It can be very, very long. You need to do canary, manual checks, approvals, and it's only really done until the next deployment starts. Because I know some canaries can last for weeks, right? Some you're rolling out with a feature flag and you're testing a subset of users, right? It could just take a long time. They're larger in scope and requires flexibility, right? A/B testing, hot fixes, rollbacks, continuous verification, right? Notifications, all that stuff, and so. So they have different processes, and in a traditional workflow, right? In a traditional workflow where we're deploying to VMs, right? That all made sense, right? But now we are in a time where Kubernetes is being adopted, right? It has wide adoption, but it's continues to grow, and now we have Kubernetes that is a declarative infrastructure that is an asynchronous process. But CI/CD hasn't caught up to that because it's a synchronous process. And so what about Argo CD? And this is true with respect to also Flux as well. But Argo CD deploys changes to a single target environment, right? And if you're familiar with application sets and applications, you're still only creating an application with application sets. So you may think that you're using application sets to deploy multiple environments. In the end of the day, you're just defining other applications, right? But it doesn't do things like understand relationships between multiple deployments. Right? Argo CD doesn't really divorces itself from that process. It doesn't provide a pipeline to orchestrate changes, right? It basically says it's looking at Git, and it's making it true, right? And for those who are using infrastructure as code, like Terraform or Ansible or whatever, from Git, same idea, right? I'm just looking at Git and I'm applying it here. It doesn't really have a pipeline. It doesn't write changes to Git. Argo CD or Flux does not write back to Git. It just looks at your source of truth and makes it true on your system. It doesn't verify anything. It just garbage in, garbage out. That was the design of Argo CD. It basically says, hey, you give me garbage, I'm going to deploy garbage. And it doesn't really verify those changes. And the very little verification does is very primitive because it's solely based on the Kubernetes health of the environment. So what does promotion look like, right? What does it actually look like in the context of GitOps? So for those who are using Argo CD or Flux for a while, especially for those who are using it in production, what does that actually look like? And I actually had this conversation with someone it was in Amsterdam, right? So it was in KubeCon Amsterdam. They're like, I need to orchestrate all these changes using GitOps, and it's really hard, right? Because if you think about it, a promotion with GitOps, Kubernetes in general, but think about it with GitOps, it can be one or many image builds, and or one or many Git repo commits, and or one or many Helm chart updates. Collectively, everything, again, everywhere, all at once, your application deployment is actually pretty complex. And it has to do with all of these things have to be orchestrated together. Your image builds, configuration change based on your image builds, Helm chart updates based on the configuration change based on the image, and it can cascade because who runs only a 1 or 2 tiered application, right? In production, it can get worse, right? Because now, if you're doing microservices, it only compounds that problem. Also, you're trying to herd cats of a different species, as I say in GitOps, right? Working with people who are using GitOps, you're not only herding cats, but you're herding cats and tigers and lions, right? A bear is not a cat, but you can see where I'm going with this, right? And coordinating a release, coordinating everyone to do a release somehow got harder with all these new tools and all these technologies, right? So, we here at Acuity work with a lot of creators of the Argo project. All our customers are Argo CD users. Heard this problem and heard it really, really loud. And so, to that end, Acuity open sourced a tool called Cargo, right? Which is why I'm wearing this shirt. This is the only shirt I actually made. This they didn't actually make me this shirt. It's an open source tool, completely free and open source tool that does multi-stage GitOps application lifecycle orchestration. So the idea of Cargo is to take all the things that you need to do for promotion and collect those for you, and then hand that off over to currently Argo CD. There's nothing stopping actually adding support for Flux. It's very, very flexible. We actually hired some ex-Weaveworks employees recently, and so we're making this a generic GitOps orchestration tool, and hopefully extending it out to things like Terraform as well, or other infrastructure as code tools, right? So, what I want to do is I want to go through each component of Cargo, explain some of the basic concepts. If you're not familiar with Argo CD or Flux, some of the concepts of Cargo may not completely make sense, but I also have a demo prepared, so I worked on it last night and this morning, so fingers crossed to the demo gods that they're nice to me, and so that way you can see it in action and kind of see the process play out with Cargo. So, but first, I'm going to go the Cargo concepts, right? So one of the things that Cargo does is it creates something called a project. I don't like this term because it's such an oversaturated term. However, I lost out on that battle. But project is really a collection of related Cargo materials, right? On the back end, it ends up being Kubernetes namespace, but it's also like a point of RBAC and how to do your promotion policies, right? So like given a project, like you may want to promote things automatically in some environments. Others, you want someone to manually approve those as well. So that's kind of where the project sits, kind of like at the head of everything in Cargo. And so the next important concept is stage. We actually went back and forth about calling it an environment or a stage. And actually, we found out, and we actually interviewed a lot of our customers and interviewed a lot of people, is when you say environment, that means something different to someone, right? You ask an infrastructure guy or an operations guy, what's an environment? They're gonna start saying, well, that's like my VPCs, that's my firewall, that's my storage system lives there. That's I have security rules built around that, that sort of thing. But when you ask a developer, like, well, what's an environment? He goes, well, that's where my application is running, right? And so we actually, we first started with environment, and people were kind of getting confused. It's like, okay, actually, we have a concept called a stage, right? And a stage is an application's instance purpose, right? Not its location. Because people tend to think about dev, stage, prod as a location or as like a boundary of some sort. And in this context of application delivery, we mean it as its purpose, right? What's the purpose of this application? It's going to be in dev. Again, with promotion policies, progression from stage to stage, dev, test, prod. can be automated or automatically triggered, and it subscribes to something called a warehouse, right? And I know these are really abstract concepts, so I'll try to explain them as I go. So you subscribe to a warehouse. So what is a warehouse? A warehouse is where you store freight. Yet another concept that I need to explain. So what is freight? So freight is just artifacts, right? So I explained an image, a container image, some sort of configuration, and some sort of Helm update. That collectively together, we call it a freight because we're shipping it down the line, right? We promote these things together, these artifacts. So we call those a freight. We need to store those somewhere. So we store them in something called the warehouse. And it's basically sources from which a stage obtains materials, right? Obtains these artifacts, Git, Helm, image repo, that sort of thing. And that is what I call a freight. And so promotion mechanisms, right? So promotion mechanisms is, okay, if there is new artifacts for me, how do I promote this? Like, what does promotion look like? What is that? What does that promotion aspect looks like? And currently, there's two ways: is to write back to Git. So basically, saying, okay, there's a new image tag. All right, I see that. There's a new version of the Helm chart. I can see that. And there is a configuration change. I see that coming. You know, someone made a Git commit somewhere. I'm going to collect all that information and write back to Git. Which is, I guess, the demo that I'm going to show shortly is how to do that. Another is to modify Argo CD applications, basically look at the Argo CD application manifests and basically change those fields for you. Since I do everything via GitOps, that won't work for me, but that is completely possible to those who aren't storing applications in Git. But that's what a promotion mechanism is. And so, so where does cargo fit in, right? And I kind of threw this together. There's probably a better diagram that my engineers probably have somewhere, but I threw this together last night. And it fits kind of, I don't want to say in the middle, but in this picture, it kind of does. It kind of sits at a place where things are collected before telling Argo CD or Flux to do its thing. So Cargo basically kind of orchestrates all the little changes and updates that you need to make in order for a promotion to happen, collect all those, and then provide that to Argo CD. So the idea is someone builds or pushes an image to a registry, Cargo will detect that, right? There was a commit to dev. It collects those and it commits that back to a Git repo. Right, a DevOps engineer looks at those. I'm like, oh, there's a new update. Let me update those, and then Cargo will see that. Argo will see that because Cargo wrote to Git. Argo would be like, oh, okay, there's a new update. Let me roll those out for you. But then Cargo does something like it'll verify those changes. It'll verify those for you, and it uses it kind of reuses some of the code for Argo rollouts. Basically, it uses what we call a verification template, which basically says, query Prometheus and give me some of those metrics, or query this webhook, or Dynatrace, whatever, right? OpenTelemetry. It's really flexible in how it figures out the health of your system. And so you kind of have like ultimate flexibility, right, or visibility with Cargo, right? You kind of see these little promotion boxes, I guess. We call it a freight line. Again, I think maybe we're being a little too cute with the naming, but with the freight line, we have each one of these updatable boxes, right, is a collection of things, right? Like, oh, a git commit and a Docker image update, right? And it's like, oh, I can promote forwards and backwards from there. And you can understand where your application is linearly. So, too long didn't read, right? TLDR. So when we think about CD, we kind of lump together deployment, delivery, right? Cargo focuses on delivery of our artifacts, right? It collects those artifacts and it delivers them to Argo CD, which its focus, or Flux, its focus is on the actual deployment of those artifacts. So we're kind of seeing a separation. We're not only separating CI away from this process, for it to focus on what it does best, we're actually separating the two CDs as well, where cargo is now, use whatever you want for CI, GitHub Actions, Jenkins, Tecton, whatever. Cargo will then collect that information for you, and then Argo CD will actually deliver those to your environment for you. So it is an open source project. So we actually do have some of our customers starting to commit to it as well, and some other members of the community. We have that's the GitHub, right? You can download it and use it today. I'm using the open source version today in the demo, and we have a Discord where all this conversation is happening. So qed.io/community is where the Discord is, and where all the chatting and development is happening as well. So before I get into the demo, I know I kind of did a fire hose type of information. I want to pause maybe for a few minutes and get any questions from anyone that anyone may have, or any clarification of any information. Yes, question?
How is the API relative to, say, Argo's API? You really do a lot of, let's say,
Can we actually, sorry, I was a little slow in the uptake.
How is the Cargo API compared to, say, the Argo API, where you really have a lot of power to do almost everything?
Yeah, so the Cargo API is in its early stages, right? So there's not a lot there. What is there are things like webhooks, right? So you can do webhooks so that way you don't have to wait till the reconciliation time. You can just wait until, as soon as something happens, you can do more event-based things. And other features are being built out. We're in our 0.4 release right now, so there's not a lot there right now, but it's currently being built. Any other questions? Go ahead. Oh, one back there.
So on one of your slides, it says that Cargo will help determine what's safe to be deployed. How does it do that? By code signing or review, or there's some signatures involved?
For what is deployable? Is that your question? How does it determine?
Yeah, what's safe to be deployed out to your production environment? How does it do that?
Yeah, so it looks, there's a few ways to do it, and I'll actually show it in the demo. There's a few ways, but what it does, it subscribes to, let's say, a Docker image repository, and by default, it'll just take whatever the newest tag is, right? You can then filter that out. You can say, okay, you know what? Give me the newest that is semantically versioned, right? So and then you can then do some sort of either regex or semantic versioning constraints, being okay, anything that starts with 1.2, give me the newest of that. And the same for a Git repo, right? You say, okay, I want to track head because that's the default, or give me the semantically versioned, the latest semantically versioned. Give me look for this pattern, right? Because maybe you're not tagging it semantically. You're not doing semver, you're doing something else, right? Some sort of, and you can do a regex is there. So there's ways to filter out. You can set those policies up with Cargo. So Cargo will filter those out for you. Okay. Any other questions? No?
Hi. So for someone that's considering moving to GitOps, that hasn't taken the plunge fully, that's still kind of doing a CI/CD setup, it's kind of, this is the exact thing that's giving me pause, is the environments and all the other things. Is using a tool like this good, you think, for a greenfield CD, like rolling out Argo and something like this on a brand new?
Yeah, so this is very much still in, Cargo's still very much in alpha. We're looking at getting to a 1.0 release by the end of this year. Cargo is something a little bit more advanced. So in the beginning, you're gonna see that you're like, this is kind of overkill for what I'm doing, but eventually you're going to start running into these problems. So early adoption, especially in a test system, just so you can see how it looks, definitely recommend. Definitely not in production because it's still fairly new and things are, there's going to be breaking changes in each release. That's why I hope the demo, because every release something breaks on my demo. So, but it is something to consider. You're right, because it's something that gives people pause in adopting GitOps, because it's like, oh, like this is a whole new paradigm in my head, and and really there's nothing out there that kind of solves that problem. So that's the Cargo's aim, especially if you're into open source. We love feedback again. So like if you jump on the Discord and say, hey, I wish it did this or I wish it did that, that's definitely the phase, because we're in the phase that we are right now. Cool. Maybe 1, 2 more questions. Yep, right here.
Say I want to roll out my theme in 12 environments because I have 80 branches. Is there an easy way to do that without manually configuring each one?
So you want to roll out 8 or 80 into 80 or 8 or 80 environments, right? Yeah. So in the demo, I'm going to release into 2 environments, but it can be as easily rolled out into multiple. So so that's actually the idea of Cargo. Is like you kind of collect them together and deploy them all at once versus manually doing it each with Argo CD, for example, where each environment can be one application, right? And so that's the actual idea of Cargo. So, all right.
Any other questions? All right.
Ready to see me fail? Okay. All right. Let's do it. I like the enthusiasm. All right. Let's take a look. I might have to make this a little bigger, but this is the application. I don't want that. What I do want is Cargo demo deploy. Okay, cool. So here I have, no, that's not it. Cargo. So let's, I usually put this in one file and customize it. Anyway, okay, let's go to dev state project, right? So here, this is again Cargo. So this is a Kubernetes tool, so everything's going to be a lot of YAML. So this Kubernetes days, I assume everyone's well vested in YAML. But a project, basically, I say I'm going to create a project where I'm holding all my things, and I have a promotion policy, meaning when I deploy, as soon as you detect new freight or new materials, deploy it into my dev stage, aka environment. And then there's a few stages between that, but once I get to, I believe I call it stage is the next environment. If that is successful, just automatically deploy it to UAT because I'm staging it and I just want to run some tests right after that. So that's kind of that from a high level. I have a warehouse. So this is kind of what I was explaining here. So a warehouse is kind of where freight is stored and where I'm defining, hey, how I'm going to retrieve my materials, right? So here, very, very simple, just for the purposes of this demo, I'm subscribing to a Git repo, right, where all my configurations live, and then I'm subscribing to an image repository where all my images for my application live, right? And that's kind of where I want to collect them all together. Again, I can even add more images and more Helm charts if I want, right? This is kind of like warehouse is kind of where everything lands. And as you can see, I commented out line 13, I can allow certain tags, I can do different constraints. I'm gonna ignore the latest tags, right? Because in production, never want to deploy latest tag. My selection strategy, just give me the newest build. There's different strategies there. You can look at the Cargo documentation, but just very simply, my warehouse, I'm looking at 2 things. And then from there, let's look at my dev stage. There we go. So dev stage, right? So what I'm saying is I'm subscribing. So where do I, line 9 and 10, where am I retrieving my, these artifacts for this specific stage, right? I'm subscribing to this warehouse. what I just showed you. Verification, right? So I'm using a verification analysis template, meaning that what am I going to use to verify that things in this stage are healthy? And I'll show you the analysis template. It's basically you create an analysis template for those who are familiar with Argo rollouts. That's exactly what you think it is. I'll show you in a minute if you don't know Argo rollouts, but I'm saying, okay, once something is rolled out, please run this analysis to determine whether or not it's healthy. And then next, again, when I was saying about promotion mechanisms, all right, once I have these things, how do I promote them? And from a GitOps standpoint, that's basically writing it back to Git. So what I'm doing is, all right, I want you to write all these materials. I want you to render them out into this specific branch. And Argo CD is then tracking that branch. So anytime there's something new, Argo CD will deploy from there. And then this last thing is like, okay, and then once things are written to Git, I want you to basically hit a webhook and say, all right, Argo CD sync for me. And the one before was analysis template, right? So analysis template, if you are familiar, this is an Argo rollouts type of thing. For the purpose of this demo, I'm just doing a sleep, right? But just to kind of illustrate the fact that if you're not familiar, this can be right here. I'm basically launching a container that just sleeps, but you can do things like query Prometheus. You can do things like query Dynatrace, OpenTelemetry, run another pod that actually does something, right? If you want to do something specific, that sort of thing. But that's what the analysis does. And then I want to show you my, actually, let me go back to test environment. So I have different stages, but I'm not going to go through each one of them. But here, if you notice here, I'm actually, so in the dev environment, I'm subscribing to the warehouse. But in my test stage, I'm subscribing to dev, meaning that I want the provenance of like whatever is deployed in this environment. I don't want you to make things available for me to promote unless they are okay in where I'm subscribing to. In this case, another stage. So what you can do, this is kind of like the CD pipelining that I was kind of mentioning in the beginning, where you do dev subscribes to the warehouse, collects those materials, deploys them. Okay, now the next step will then look at that and be like, okay, if those are okay, I'm subscribed to those, that means it's okay to deploy to me. I'm not doing it automatically, but it'll be available to me, right? So, and then the same kind of idea, you can run analysis templates. Promotion mechanism is basically the same, except I'm writing to a different branch. But as you can see, you can run different analysis template and have different kinds of promotion mechanisms per stage, depending on your environment. And so that's here. And then, yeah, right branch. So basically, what I'm doing, so it's a little interesting to put this together. So I'll kind of walk through it a little bit. So here I am looking at changes made into main, right? So someone merges or commits directly into main, right? But someone does something to main. And then in this, let me look at the dev stage. In this instance, okay, anytime someone writes something to main, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those, and then that's what this line 18 means render. I'm going to render those files, right? So Helm or customize, and I'm going to write those to this branch, this read-only branch. And Argo CD looks at that branch and rolls things out. It's basically a payload branch in your Git repo. And it writes back. So, so that's kind of like high level. Here I have 2 prod instances. Here, and then US West 1, US West 2, right, or something, or US East 1, whatever you want to call it, right? I have 2 instances. I have, so that's kind of the demo deployment configuration, right? And I also have This is just a sample code application that builds an application and pushes it up to Docker, or I think I'm doing a Quay key, wherever it depends where you're from, how you pronounce it. I have Argo CD deploying an application here, and then I have Cargo. Actually, I think I'm going to need to make a quick change, but here, here Argo CD, the applications are missing because there's nothing in those branches, right? And Cargo's not doing anything. I promoted, this. There's something running in dev. If I look here, this is the dev environment here. So, and actually looking at this, it looks like this won't. Again, this is live. Yeah, it won't let me promote it because it's not healthy yet. 1 second. How do I do this? Okay, I'm gonna make a massive change. Where is my, oh lordy, okay. What did I do here? Let's go to app base. What I'm gonna do is, let's see if this makes it work. No ingress. The problem is the ingress isn't running. Actually, I could install the ingress. It doesn't run. Anyways, live debugging. Lordy. Okay, dev. I had a sed. My kingdom for a sed. Okay. That was, what was that? Test and then UAT, and I think it should be okay after this. Well, this is a good way to test this actually. Oops. So let's do git add. Git commit. We'll do it live. Make sure to sign your commits, as always. Okay, that might be a little better. Okay. And then I need to refresh this. Okay. So you see the new freight came down and actually automatically promoted to dev, and that's because I have auto promotion set. So anytime there's a new freight coming in, it'll auto promote, and then it'll automatically. I need to stop this here. Let me do this. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So. Pretend you didn't see any of that. All right, so so I have this freight, right? It's deployed into here. I might need to, okay, cool. So this is my dev app. There's nothing in prod or test or anything like that. So new freight came down, and that automatically got promoted to dev. I can then promote this to push this to test, and I can say, okay, since this succeeded on a deployment in this environment, I'm going to click yes. What ends up happening is that it collects those artifacts, builds a new manifest, commits it directly back to Git. And if I go here, you can see that it actually did that. Cargo did that for me. And then it synced this application. What I can do here, since it's synced, was successful in test, I had an automatic promotion to UAT, which that's going on here. As you can see here, it says progressing. And because it passed test, right? And if I go here, if I do get pods, cargo demo, you can see the analysis ran, right? Because it was just asleep. And so now I have this. Someone asked, like, okay, like I want to promote it to 800 environments or whatever. So this is how I do it. I ship, there's like a little bus or whatever. I can ship this off to prod, and all my production environments get updated with one. And if I go here, you'll see that they'll start progressing and syncing, right? And so that was kind of like pretty straightforward of like how I promote. There was a configuration change and how I promote those. And I just realized I'm running out of time. So let's see if I can do this real quick. So in actuality, what actually happens, right? Okay, so let's go through this simple use case to see if I can go through it really quick in the next 10 minutes or so. I want to make an application change. This application change requires a configuration change. And it requires a configuration change because I'm adding some sort of support for something, right? And so, so let's do this. So then let's, here, I wrote a little cheat sheet, but like, if I go to here and I uncomment this, right? So I'm gonna add something in the navigation bar of my application here. I'm gonna add a navigation bar, so that's what I did there. Boom, all right, I need to go to my app.go, and for those that Go, create a new route, right, for that in my application here. Oops, save, please save it. Save. Okay, and then I'll go to the next step while it's thinking about doing something. And then my handlers, right, I'm actually, lightning code, right? Who needs AI? Right, so then I uncomment the code I pre-wrote for this, just to show that I am writing an actual new application. So that application requires a configuration change. And so I'm gonna go to my configuration, and then again, since this is, like you said, a cooking show, app overlays, what I'm gonna do is remove dev, cp-a, and that would be hack dev here. Okay, so then what I did is I added basically a deployment patch saying, oh, hey, by the way, there's a new configuration file I need to do. And then I actually need to delete these patches for the networking. There we go. All right, and so then here, again, I need to do git add, oops. Git add, git commit, doing it live. Git push, origin main. Boom, configuration change is done. Let's build the application. Git add, git commit, sam, live coding, git push origin main. Cool, so that will, in my app, that should fire off a GitHub action. Live coding, right, which it does, which builds an application. Actually, if I go down to cargo, there should be some new freight. Let me refresh this. There should be some new freight because I made a configuration change. That should come down the freight line pretty soon. Yeah, so you see that. It came down. I made a configuration change, but my app change, yeah, I need to my port forward. Anytime you do a rollout, your port forward doesn't port forward. Okay. So the configuration change was there, but not the application change. And then this kind of goes however it goes. If you want to watch paint dry, I'll do that. But you see here, cargo detected. There's new freight. It's like, but you can see the image version's the same, right? Because I only made a configuration change. So I collected that freight and put it in dev for me because I have that automatic promotion policy. And then, and we can wait for this. Oh no, what did I do? Is Quay down again? Where's, Podman exited with code 125. Okay. Let's do this then. Where's my app? We still have some time, so let's salvage this. Docker, login, Quay. Awesome. Okay. Docker build. Whoa, I don't want that. Docker build -t. Let's call this scale. We'll just do it manually instead of, I'll debug that GitHub action for what, oh no. Interesting. I think my base image no longer exists. Oh, yeah. But I wonder why it failed the GitHub action. Yeah, because this is an M1, right? The architecture. I would think it would. What's the way to build? It's Docker build. There's a flag you can run, right, to try to build. Platform, is it? Yes, you're right. Okay. Build X. Okay, gotcha. Build X build. Or is it probably the default? Come on, dash. Platform. What is it? AMD 64 or X? Well, I'm building it for X. Linux, is it? Thank you. Oh, I have to do, again, build. No. Interesting. No manifests. Okay. Okay, yeah, so the Arch Linux doesn't have support for AM. Yeah, wow. Okay, let's try to build this again. So what was the error here? Let's see here. Can't talk to V1 container registry. What? This literally like worked the other day. To Quay? Yeah, I am. Well, I gave it the credentials. No, present on local podman. Can we just rebuild it again? Let's rerun. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm like, let's just rerun it. Let's see what happens. Funny story, Red Hatter, right? Working at Acuity, they told me they were the ones that brought down Quay that one time, that we needed to make the MySQL adjustments. It was them. Anyway, I'll tell you the story. You know, I'm like, that was you guys. Like, that took us down for a while. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, it builds fine. It's just pushing it to Quay, looks like. I need this win. Yesterday, my workshop blew up too, so. All right, it does build. It's pushing. Okay. Successful. All right, it was just temporary glitch, maybe. Rate limit, who knows? Oh, maybe that was it. Yeah, maybe it had to. Okay, so then it built and pushed an image. Let's look at cargo. That should bring down the freight. It takes a little bit, and I think I may have the semver on it as well, but we'll see. Oh, come on. What was my configuration actually? Warehouse. Newest build, ignore tag latest. Okay, that's fine. Where is Christian H014, cargo, okay. Okay, it's there. So let's go back to cargo and see. Might be an error on my end configuring. Oh, there it is. So new freight came down, and now it's a newer version. Come on, which means it's rolling it out on dev. So third one, okay. And then let's promote that just manually while we're waiting. Named a lion, okay. Okay, cool. So then that means that my port forward needs to be reset, I think. Yeah, so here, now I have the new greet here, right? And so then I can then promote these artifacts collectively, right? I have an image, I have the configuration that is associated with that image, that release, right? And then I can then promote those from environment to environment by basically Cargo orchestrating it, delivering those to Argo CD. So once it collects what it needs, it gives it to Argo CD, and Argo CD just does kind of what it does naturally. It doesn't actually even know that Cargo is involved, right, in any other way. So looks like we have about 5-ish, maybe a little bit more-ish minutes for any questions that you may have, right? So demo kind of worked. That was kind of cool. So it worked a lot better than I expected because I just did it last night and this morning. So, so yeah, again, Cargo, open source project created by the creators of the Argo project to basically help orchestrate GitOps promotions. So, yeah, so for any questions that anyone has here? Oh, question over here?
All right, let me get to you.
So this looks to be like a single image. If you had a ton of images, would they all be different freight lines, or do they get aggregated, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it depends how you set up your warehouse. So everything will land in a warehouse. You can, and that is basically an array, right? It's a list. So you can have multiple images, and you do kind of have to get creative in how you promote them, right? The promotion mechanism, because you may want to write an image, because if you have multiple images, you're writing them to different, customized overlays or what have you. But you'll aggregate them together kind of similarly with a git commit, an image, or image, Helm chart, any combination of those. Cargo will work with that. Any other questions? No? Oh, question right here.
Would you be able to pin different versions to different environments, I guess, with the config files, right?
Not currently, but it is in the next release. So yes, with the asterisk, we're introducing a feature. We don't know what we're going to call it yet, but basically to freeze. Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, hey, this environment, I want you to freeze it on this version of these, from this specific freight. Like, I want you to, even if someone clicks upgrade or anything, like, no, we're going to, big red button sort of thing. That is not there currently, but it will be there. Cool. Oh, question here. Like your shirt, by the way. It's funny.
Thank you. How easy would it be to lift and shift this to disconnected networks? So the only thing currently, there is a bug that you can't provide credentials for internal repos. But the idea there is, yeah, you can subscribe to currently only GitHub Enterprise, like if you have GitHub, behind your firewall, or an internal registry. But the internal registry, it needs to be open. We're fixing that bug. But the idea is, if in a disconnected environment, you basically install this on-prem, and instead of pointing it to public repos, you point it to your local repos. All right. Question?
If someone was interested in working on the open source aspect of it, what would be your entry point? Like, just join the Discord and...
Yeah, so the two places, obviously, join the Discord, right, to get some more information. If you want to contribute, obviously it'd be GitHub polling the issues, and we have we're tracking like features and issues in GitHub, and so but yeah, the entry point would be the community Discord. So yeah, for sure.
All right, I think we're just about at time.
Yeah, we're just out of time. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for an awesome talk.
Yes.